Hi, I'm Justin White. We're here today at Avelda Lodge in Darebin. The Anzac reunion meeting was conceived by Worshipful Brother Lieutenant Colonel Barry Tinkler during his term as Worshipful Master of the Army Lodge No. 478 in 1982. The first meeting was held as a special daylight meeting of the Army Lodge with a view to enabling those brethren who, for whatever reason, were unable to attend the normal evening meetings. Shortly after that, representatives from 3 service lodges, the Victorian Naval and Military Lodge No. 49, the United Service Lodge No. 330 and the Army Lodge No. 478 met and agreed to hold the meeting on an annual basis for the same purpose, with each lodge hosting the meeting in rotation. In 2010, Vietnam Veterans Memorial Lodge No. 921 was invited to join the other 3 lodges in hosting the meeting. I'm here with Don Shearman, Worshipful Master of the Army Lodge of Victoria. Don, can you tell us a little bit about Freemasonry in your life and how you started with Freemasonry?
I became involved in Freemasonry initially because a number of my friends had been, and I was living in the officers' mess at Randwick Barracks at the time, and through that became aware that a couple of them came in rather late in the evening, some evenings, and it was about once a month, and asked them where they'd been, and found that they'd been at the Lodge Army and Navy in New South Wales. And through that I became quite intrigued and inquired more about Freemasonry, was approached to join, and I did, and became a member of Lodge Army and Navy in New South Wales. They have a reciprocal arrangement with the Army Lodge down here, so when I moved to Victoria in 2008, I actually joined this lodge.
And Don, you've got an interesting background with, I think, your grandfather being a Freemason, but your father not being a Freemason. Can you just tell us a little bit about that connection and journey?
Yes, my mother's father was a Freemason, but at the time I joined Freemasonry, I didn't realise that. I became aware of it while I was in the chair of the Lodge Army and Navy in New South Wales, and through that inquired through the Grand Lodge and found that he'd joined Freemasonry when he returned from World War I, as a number of his mates had. And I traced his Masonic history through from there and went and visited the lodges that he'd been a member of.
And Don, you've got an interesting story, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, about the people that you've installed and who you've been installed by. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yes, the second time I went into the chair in New South Wales, I was actually installed by a member of the Jewish faith, and 2 years later when I came out of the chair, just prior to moving down here, I installed a Muslim in the chair as my successor. So it's quite an interesting aspect of the universality of Freemasonry, how the 3 faiths were linked in successive attempts in the chair.
And lastly, Don, can you tell us about what Freemasonry means to you in your life and how it's impacted your life?
Freemasonry, well, I was a Freemason when I became married, and one of the things I told my wife was that if it ever got in the way, I'd happily quit Freemasonry because she was more important. So far she hasn't held me to that, and it's proved a boon in my life in that I very much follow the tenet that it makes good men better, and I've found that through my life I've been able to be an example to other people, whether they're Freemasons or not.
Thanks for your time today, Don. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm with Past Grand Master and Worshipful Brother Frank Pope from the United Services Lodge. Frank, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Could you just give us a really short background on your history with Freemasonry and why you joined in the first place and where it's taken you through the times?
Right, well, I joined Freemasonry in 1953. The reason being I was in a small town on the northwest coast of Tasmania, and I was very much involved in sport at the time. I was playing district cricket. I was umpiring in the Northwestern Tasmanian Footballers League's football competition, and I was running professionally. And one of the chaps who was a member of the Powlett Lodge, which is at Wynyard on the northwest, a veteran of the Boer War, said to me one day, you know, you knock around a lot and you meet a lot of people, you ought to be a Freemason because you'd you'd be able to ensure that wherever you were, you would have friends, even though you mightn't know them. Anyway, eventually I joined, and it'll be 60 years in November this year since my joining.
Wow.
And in the meantime, it's taken me to America and to Scotland and to England and to Malaysia, Ireland, and every state in Australia, and the 2 territories. It's been a wonderful experience, because I think when one meets a Freemason, it's like meeting one's brother. And I don't mean that in the context of people who are not Freemasons are not equally pleasant to meet, but you know you've got something in common with the person with whom you're speaking.
And you were past Grand Master as well, Frank?
Yes. I was Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of Victoria in 1991, 92 and 93. And that was a wonderful experience. It was during that time that I attended the 275th anniversary installation of the United Grand Lodge of England, of which of course the Duke of Kent is the Grand Master. And in the same time I visited Ireland, and prior to that, in 1986, I went to Scotland for the 250th anniversary of the installation of the Grand Lodge of Scotland.
Amazing.
So I was privileged to attend both of those, and when I was serving with the American Army in 1960, I attended a lot of meetings of the Masonic lodges in the Hawaiian Islands. Very interesting.
And Frank, just lastly, can you tell us just a really brief history about your military career and what happened throughout those times?
Well, I reported for duty in the Army on the 7th of February 1942, and because I'd been in the Boy Scouts and knew Morse code, I was allocated to the Australian Corps of Signals. I did the necessary basic training, and on turning 19 I enlisted in the AIF, because that was the minimum age when one could join the AIF, and from there I did the normal sort of conversion course that a telegraphist would do, involving procedures and types of operating equipment and so on. And then from there I was posted to Darwin in 1943, and I remained there until around May 1944, and I came home, had some leave, had my teeth drilled and had my injections, and I went over into the Netherlands East Indies, and I served in the Netherlands East Indies and Borneo. And the most interesting thing I think about it was when the war ended, I was only a young single fellow, and I was allocated to the unit that had been raised to carry out the repatriation of the Australian, Dutch and British troops who had been prisoners of war of the Japanese. So I met a lot of fellows who had been on the Burma-Thailand Railway, and they were about as thin as one of those supporting the camera. I've never seen men in such emaciated states as they were, and interestingly enough, some of the fellows who came through our hands at the time were chaps that I knew, 2 or 3 with whom I'd been at school.
Wow.
And others that I knew through sport, and it was quite a rewarding experience, but it was horrifying at the same time. And I think that opened my eyes to the need for the human being to be friendly to his right and to his left, and render service to anyone whenever the opportunity required his capability so to do. And I think that was what attracted me into Freemasonry when Mr. George Burns said to me, it's an experience that you'll find interesting if you decide to join, because when you when you look around the lodge room on the night that you're admitted to the organisation, there will be people there that you would expect to see. There will be people missing that you would expect to see there. But the greatest surprise of all, there'll be people there that you'd never expect to see. And that has been my experience over the 60 years that I've been a member.
Frank, it's an honour to meet you today, and we thanks for your time.
Many thanks.